So excited to be having Yasmin, and I'm gonna do a short introduction about her right now before we start. So Yasmin Boland is an international astrologer, New Age writer, and the author of Angel Astrology, Moonology, Astrology Basics, which is now going to be called Astrology Made Easy, and it's coming out in September, and the upcoming Moonology Oracle Cards, that's coming out September 25th, and the Moonology Diary that came out in August 7 and already has so many 5-star reviews on Amazon. Hello, Kat. Thank you for joining us live. Let me know you can hear me properly. Okay, so Yasmin writes for publications all around the world, including the Sunday Telegraph, Red, Soul and Spirit, and Charity's Fate magazines, as well as the Daily Stars for Yahoo, Australia, and New Zealand. And today, Yasmin will be joining us to talk all about the energy of the moon and working with the energy of the moon to manifest our desires. Okay, let me bring on Yasmin right now. Hello, Yasmin, welcome.
Hi, George, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Everybody watching live, let us know if you can hear Yasmin as well, but everything looks to be perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm in Malta.
Yes, you're in Malta. We're actually very close by to it right now. We're having a chat about it before. Yes. I can feel your energy.
Yes.
Okay. So Yasmin, I wanted to start this interview with a very basic question just to situate everybody on the topic of the moon and the importance of working with the moon in our lives. So my question is, why work with the moon? What is significant about the moon that has attracted people throughout the millennia to look at it, to study it, and to work with its energy?
Very good question, George. Okay, so why work with the moon? In my life, I didn't sort of sit down one day and think, right, that's it, I'm going to work with the moon. I actually kind of got wind of people having done it. Women have done it for literally hundreds of years, women in particular, and some enlightened men. And the thing is, I'm an astrologer, as you mentioned, and if you go through astrology history, what you find mainly is that most of the astrologers back in the day were men, okay? And the people doing the moonology were women. Mm-hmm. And in astrology, the sun is very yang, obviously, and male, and the moon is very feminine and yin, very yin and feminine. And so it's kind of, to me, it's like when you say, why work with the moon? It's not quite the same thing, but it's almost like saying, why have lunch?
Yeah.
It's just like, to me, it's just like, well, obviously there's the moon up there and it's up there for a reason. And we are strongly connected to it. We know that because, our bodies are 70% water and they respond to the moon, and the tides work with the moon, and women periods with the moon. And, it's just, to me, it's almost like staring us in the face. In fact, I would say, the harder question to answer in a way would be, why not work with the moon? Because, it's so natural to think, we're on this planet spinning around the sun. The moon is spinning around us. And it's just a natural cosmic timer. And as I said, women in particular, have worked with the moon for literally hundreds of years. But as you would probably know, and a lot of the people listening would know, at one point they started burning women at the stake for working with the moon, among other things. And so really it kind of just got suppressed and it got lost. And what's really interesting, there's always for every action, there's always an opposite reaction. What's really interesting is when you look at what's going on in the world today, especially politically, especially over in the United States at the moment, where, there's all this carry on, and it seems like, gosh, we feel like in so many ways, we feel like we're at a low point. But in fact, now more than ever, women are working with the moon. And I think that's maybe a reaction to what's going on. And you know, there's all this other stuff going on as well, George. You know, you don't need me to tell you, but you know about it. But in a way, it's a good context. So there's the whole Me Too, Time's Up, the rise and rise of the divine feminine. You know, more and more women getting in touch with their powers, and women have always done that by working with the moon. So again, to me, it makes absolutely total sense that this has become a thing.
So it's part of the wave of empowerment that's coming up against the patriarchy and all the destruction that has created in the world. Basically, it's part of the movement of finding balance. Would you say?
Yeah, it totally is, and it's so interesting. You know, talking to you, a man, about the you know, the kickback against the patriarchy. But that's why I've always loved you, George, because you know, like, you are one of the guys that gets it, and there are lots of guys that get it. You know, and my husband's an amazing man, and he gets it as well. But yes, it is kind of about the patriarchy, and it's about, I mean, you think about it, the moon is magic, and by working with the moon, especially doing the things that I recommend, which are not things I invented particularly, they're things that I sort of framed a bit, I suppose, in Moonology. But, you know, it actually empowers women enormously. Now, women have not been empowered over the years.
No, at all.
And, yeah. And, I mean, even my son, who's 11, you know, like, it's been really interesting seeing him grow from, you know, being a newborn to 2 or 3 and, you know, loving me so much and seeing me. I'm like the breadwinner in our family. I'm like, you know, the dynamo of the family. And then actually he grew up the first couple of years in Australia, where we had a female prime minister for a little while, Julia Gillard. But then, you know, and me seeing him thinking women are really empowered. But then now that he's 11, he's starting to realize the truth, which is some women are empowered, but not all women. And it is actually kind of still a man's world. So that's, you know, and that's the way it's been. Not, I mean, even a man's world's a funny thing to say, but you know what I mean? Men basically still have the power.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, women make magic using the moon. We've done that for hundreds of years. And I'm not particularly a witch. Like, I'm not Wiccan. I'm not into Wicca. You know, I'm not in a coven or a coven. I don't even know how you say it. You know, I wouldn't even say I'm a witch, because I'd probably offend actual witches who'd say, well, you're not a witch because you don't practice. No, you don't practice. But I make moon magic all the time. I always think of myself, I mean, you know, you used to live in London, you know, I live in Fulham, one of the most middle class suburbs, you know, it's right next door to Chelsea. And I'm like, I think, well, I'm the Fulham witch, you know. And but what people did was they, you know, by burning women at the stake for working with the moon, I mean, among other things, but that was a big part of it, was making magic. They basically disempowered women. And now, for some reason, it's quite hard to fathom, but I think it's to do with I do think it's to do with the total eclipse of the sun that we had in 1999, you know, when the lights basically turned on.
I remember.
In England, down in Cornwall, That was always said at the time. It was also around the time of something that was called harmonic concordance. I mean, obviously some people listening to this were barely even born in 1999, but you know, it started then, and it's happening and it's happening and it's happening and it's still happening. So women are basically reclaiming their power, and that is including working with the moon, and that is including, you know, with equal pay. It's all part of the same.
It's all part of the same wave of change that's coming up.
Yes, and our mutual friend Amy Kybird at Hay House, who commissioned my book Moonology when you were actually working at Hay House. That's how I met you initially. Exactly. You know, Amy was on the tip. You know, she saw it coming, and because she's attuned to the moon, people will see it coming, but some people still don't see it, and they still don't realize what's going on. But people are realizing.
People can feel the change coming, so they're drawn towards the moon. So it's the perfect timing for the Moonology Oracle cards. Now, why did you want to create a card deck? What is it exactly? It's so beautiful. I love the back cover, the back drawing of the cards.
Beautiful, beautiful.
What is the purpose of the Moonology Oracle cards? What did you envision these cards to be and do for women and men who want to connect to the divine feminine energy of the moon?
Okay, so what happened was that Hay House sort of came to me and said, we want you to do some oracle cards. And I had been working on decks of oracle cards for myself for about, I don't know, 5 years. And so I kind of like, I actually wrote back to them, when I had the meeting in Hay House in the morning, and I think by the end of the day, I'd actually written back to them with the proposal, because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And what I really wanted to do was to create a deck. I love oracle cards. I'm a massive oracle card fan. Like, I've got so many oracle cards. I'm actually on holidays at the moment, so I'm not at home. But I have so many oracle cards at home that I kind of, it's become an issue. They have their own, bookshelf practically.
I had to declutter myself.
Yes, exactly. So because I love them, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted, which was essentially to provide a deck that would be really frank and forthright in its answers. So that was kind of my number one thing. But the other thing I wanted to do, and it's probably because I've got a Capricorn moon on my MC, so I like to teach sometimes, was I wanted them to be used as learning tools.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I wanted them to be used as learning tools. So I wanted them to be something that people could go to and, just get one card and get an answer to their question. But also, as they use the book, which goes with it, I wanted them to be able to learn. So each page you'll find at the very end has a thing, the teaching. So this is the full moon in Taurus, for example, and it will teach you a little bit about the astrology as well. Because what I've found is, with all these people who now want to work with the moon around the world, there's still a lot to learn, because it's so very simple to say, oh, okay, so we'll make our new moon wishes at the new moon, and we'll make our full moon forgiveness at the full moon. But there's so many nuances. So I've tried to start to teach people a little bit. So as much as being an oracle deck, it's also kind of a teaching tool for anyone who wants to use it like that as well.
That's what I love about them as well.
Can I just say, George, it's been so interesting, because the artist is a girl called Nix Rowan. Yeah. And here, there's a beautiful picture.
Yes.
And she's in Canada, and we actually had this really weird misunderstanding when we were doing the cards together, and we didn't actually communicate at all. Everything I communicated with her was through Hay House. And in fact, I had her email address wrong, so I thought she just wasn't replying to me, which was a bit strange. But the result of that was that basically it was all kind of quite separate, her drawings and my words.
Yeah.
So I did give her lots and lots of ideas about, these colors and these feelings, but they're all just in documents that I sent to Amy, actually, who then forwarded them to her. So I was actually really nervous about how the cards were going to work out. And I've had my deck for about a month, I think. And I don't know if you've used them yet, but honestly, I found them so accurate.
So to the point. That's what I love about card.
I'm so happy.
What I love about this deck, Yasmin, is that, as you said, it gives you straight yes or no answers. It gives you a clear answer. Because when we really go to oracle cards for guidance, we don't really want the ambiguity. We just want a clear guidance as to what we have to do. And you're a straightforward person as well, having known you for the past 3 to 4 years. So this is perfectly reflected and mirrored in the deck.
Yes.
Now, so correct me if I'm wrong. There are 12 cards about the new moon in each of the zodiac signs, and then 12 cards about the full moon in all of the zodiac signs. And then we have the wild cards with the special moons. Okay. So what I want to do right now, I want to introduce people to the energies, the basic 8 phases of the moon, what the energy means and how they can work with it to manifest their desires. And I've got the cards picked out. So let's go through them. So the new moon, what is the energy of the new moon and how can people work with it?
Okay, now do you mean the energy of the new moon in the sky or the energy of the new moon in the card?
Aha. Is there a difference?
A bit. So the energy of the new moon in the sky is it's the start of a new cycle. It happens once a month. So once every 2 weeks we get a new moon or a full moon. They go in order: new moon, full moon, new moon, full moon. If you get that card, basically it means that whatever you're asking about is actually going to have a sort of a refresh. You know, it's starting. It's definitely not ending. So often people will ask, you know, should I leave my job, or if you got that, you kind of think, well, yes, probably, you know, there's a new start coming.
A new start is coming. That's what it says.
Oh,
Perfect.
there you go.
And with regards to the new moon in general, is it again about new wishes and new beginnings and new starts?
Yes, it's a time to make your wishes, set your intentions. You know, if ever I'm launching something, I try my best to launch it at the new moon. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, moving on to the next phase, which is the waxing crescent moon.
Okay.
Now, what's that about?
Yeah, people will be familiar with that. The new moon, you actually can't see. That's when you first start to see the little sliver of the moon. And okay, so I can see that it says, have faith in your dreams. I put that because if you get that card, the waxing crescent moon is like it's the second phase of the moon using what we call the Dane Rajya model. And it basically means things are just starting, and it's when you start to put more energy into something. So if you make your new moon wishes, it's when you start to really make an effort to make them come true. And if you get that card, it basically means, you know, you're just at the start of the cycle, so you have to keep the faith in what it is you're trying to aim for.
So it's basically a taking action card. Like you've said your wishes, now it's time to take action and move forward.
Yes, and also, you know, as a card, it would mean that whatever you're asking about is just developing.
Oh, that's interesting. So something that hit me right now, this working with the new moon and the phases of the moon, it feels to me that the first part, it's until the full moon, it's all about taking action, which is the divine masculine. So would you say that the moon has both a divine masculine and a divine feminine energy in it?
Yes, and in fact, you said that amazing thing, which I quoted again quite recently, which was basically that about the moonlight. So this is something for people to think about. The sun is yang, the moon yin. Okay, when we get moonlight, it's the yang sunlight
and the moon,
the yin, and that's why moonlight, I think, is so important to sort of dance around in and bathe in. All that. So the other thing to mention though is that the new moon is very yin. You can't actually see the new moon. It's a very quiet time. But the full moon is very yang. So, you know, that's how it goes. So it goes from
yin, it's a progressive kind of energy,
and back to yin again. Yes, and it doesn't stop.
Yeah, and for everybody watching, I'm going to share that article that I wrote on Yasmin's website, which is all about moonbathing and how to work with the moonlight. Okay, moving on to the first quarter moon, which is your commitment is being tested. What's that about? Okay,
so basically a week after the new moon, you get the first quarter moon, and it's when, in fact, the sun is making what's called a square, which is a hard angle to the moon, or the moon's making a hard angle to the sun. And it's a time usually where there'll be a little crisis, which will often test how committed you are to whatever it is you said you're committed to. And so with this card, if you get that card, it would mean, you know, you're going through a few issues at the moment because you need to decide how committed you are to whatever it is you're asking about.
Ooh, loving this one. I like the darker colors here as well. It just prompts you to think.
They're amazing pictures by Nick Rowan.
And then we have the gibbous moon. You're very close to achieving your goal.
Yes, and that is actually the cover picture on the diary. So gibbous means bulging. Such a funny word, okay? And it's like the moon is just bulging with all the moonlight that it's connected, all the information, everything. And so the gibbous moon comes just before the full moon, and it's when everyone starts to go really crazy. Getting that card though means, you know, it's nearly there. You're nearly at the desired manifestation, which is the full moon. So you're nearly there.
Almost there. Perfect. And then we're there already with the full moon, surrender to the divine.
Yes. So now the reason why I put that is because I've been going to an ashram in India for about, I don't know, 15 years or something. And every full moon there's a beautiful full moon ceremony which can involve up to like 10,000 people. And all sorts of amazing things go on. And it's the full moon is like the manifestation, it's the explosion. But for me, I wanted to call that surrender to the divine because the full moon is the time to surrender. Basically, what's happened has happened. The full moon brings the climax, and now you need to surrender it. Because then as soon as we move past the moment of the full moon, we actually go into the waning cycle.
Yeah.
So it's time to let go.
So that's why we work with the full moon with forgiveness a lot, because it creates that kind of an overwhelming feeling.
Yes, exactly. And the reason why we do full moon forgiveness as well, I'm not sure this is what you meant, but all our emotions come up at the time of the full moon. So, you know, it's a really good time to access your emotions and actually process them.
Okay, perfect. And then we move on into the disseminating moon.
My crazy holiday hair, excuse me.
I'm loving that. Disseminating moon, and the saying is take time to breathe out. What does that mean, and how do we work with it?
Okay, so the disseminating moon is the first phase, and these all go in 45 degrees, okay? So 45 degrees after the full moon, we move into the disseminating moon phase. And basically, it's like, oh, right, well, thank God that's over. Now I can kind of like try and, you know, get some kind of balance, emotional balance going again. It's actually a time to share whatever you've learned with people. And it's a time when the intense energies of the past few days will start to calm down. And if you get the disseminating moon as a card, it probably means that the emotional intensity of the situation has peaked and you're now into a calmer phase.
Like better things are coming, like we're letting go of the old, and
in all fairness,
recovering.
It may not be better things are coming. It may be, you know, it may be, well, you know, you've had the breakup, and but now you can start to
kind of resting.
Yes, exactly. Resting, recuperating,
recovering kind of.
It doesn't have to be negative, but just not to give people the wrong impression. It can be both.
Of course. Okay. And then the other one, I love how dark these cards are because it just brings up so much mysticism.
Yeah.
The other one is a third quarter moon. Adjustments are required.
Yes. So we had the first quarter moon, which is a week after the new moon. A week later, the full moon. And now a week later, we get the third quarter moon. And basically, astrologically, it can be a time where there's sort of some upsets. But it's really about also saying, you know, it's time for you to release your grip because, you know, did you actually surrender or are you still, you know, overly attached? Yes. And so that card can also mean, you know, like it's time, we're in the cycle of letting go. Have you actually let go yet?
Releasing attachments.
Exactly.
Okay. And then finally, we have the balsamic moon, which is a time for healing, which is just before the new moon.
Yes. So the balsamic moon is when just before the moon disappears. And balsamic, you know, we all know balsamic vinegar.
Yes.
Actually, balsamic means healing and soothing. Okay, so it's a very healing and soothing time. So again, this card would come up to signify that you've moved into a more healing phase. So look, whatever you've been through, you're going to be in a more healing phase. Yeah. I was just thinking, shall I draw a card for everybody who watches
Yes,
this?
let's draw a card for everybody. Let's see.
All right, let's have a look. Go here. So card, if you're listening, if you're hearing this, it's for you. Oh!
What is it?
The best card.
Oh, full moon, surrender to the desire, my favorite.
No, surrender to the divine.
Sorry, to the divine.
You can surrender to your desire as well, George.
Yeah. So what is our message from this card?
So I think the message for this card is get in touch with the divine, get in touch with the divine mother, get in touch with the divine feminine, get in touch with the moon, and surrender. You know, just, I mean, what you need to do is you kind of need to state your intentions and then surrender them.
Thank you very much for this group reading for everybody watching live as well as the replay as well. Now,
Exactly.
before we move on into the special moon cards, I want you to touch a little bit on the topic of there are 12 new moons on the zodiac, on each of the zodiac signs, and then 12 full moons on each of the zodiac signs. How does the zodiac sign aspect affect the meaning of the cards in general?
So, I mean, if you know anything about astrology, you'll know that, you know, Leo is all about shining and strutting your stuff, and you know, Gemini is about communication, and Aquarius is about humanitarianism. So each new and full moon actually takes on some of the characteristics of the star signs. The other thing, though, that's really important to know when you start working with the moon and working with, you know, the cards, but also just working with the moon in general, is that with the 12 signs of the zodiac, we actually cover pretty much everything you can think of in your life. So whether it's work or home or money or love or sex or friends or communication, travel, study, teaching, it's all covered by the 12 signs. So for people who actually want to work on themselves and, you know, become better people, basically, you know, we can improve ourselves by working with the moon. So you work with the 12 new moons and the 12 full moons of the year. You will have worked on every single part of your life. You'll have set intentions in every single part of your life, and you'll have done release work in every single part of your life over the course of 1 year. So that's something that's really worth thinking about as well. And actually, I was just, before we got on the line, I was just writing the stars for the end of September, the horoscopes. And that's going to be the full moon in Aries. So it's going to be a new Aries cycle. Aries being the first sign of the zodiac. So it's going to be a really good time to work with that one and then commit to the 12.
So we can use the card as well as a tool for personal growth to work on, like, not without giving readings, just taking each card for the new moon and the full moon, meditating on it, doing some journaling about it, and just working on that particular zodiac sign and what it brings for us into our lives. That's amazing. So many uses for the deck. I love that. That's
what I wanted to create, actually, that it could actually be used as a teaching tool as well as for divination.
It's so many layers. That's what I love about it. Okay, so let's move on to my favorite part, all these special moons that I have zero idea about. I mean, I know the basics of astrology, but with regards to the special moons, I haven't really sitting down to do some meditation and channeling about their energy. So I'm very curious to know about them. Now, let me start. I'm going to leave my favorite ones for the end. And let's start with a new moon eclipse. What is the energy of the new moon eclipse?
All right. So the new moon is a time of beginnings, intentions, and all that. The new moon eclipse is basically that on steroids. so if you think, basically with the new moon, you set your intentions for the coming 4 weeks until the next new moon, and then you do it again. The eclipse, you do it for the next 6 months, because we only get eclipses every 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and predictions that you make for yourself, once you learn to work with the moon, they are valid for 6 months.
Wow. And does it matter what zodiac sign the new moon eclipse is in?
Well, it does, because each sign will hit a different part of your chart depending on your rising sign.
Perfect. I love this. Okay, I look forward to the next one so I can make my wishes for the next 6 months. Let's move on to the full moon eclipse.
So again, it's a very similar thing. You know, the full moon is always about letting go. Now, lunar eclipses, full moon eclipses can be quite difficult, especially for people like me, who I'm a moon child. I'm quite, you know, soft, and I don't really like change. I'm a bit vulnerable. And a full moon can be a time of change. So full moon eclipse is a time of double change or triple change.
Big
So
changes.
I find them a bit more challenging potentially than new moon eclipses. But the thing is to remember, eclipses actually, they're just about getting us back on the right track. You know, if we've gone off our path, it will shove us back on the path, you know, as unceremoniously as needed.
I love this. And before we move into the other cards, everybody watching live, let us know if you have any questions for Yasmin about any of the cards, about anything about the moon. She's here to answer them. And let me just show the back of the card again, which I love, shows a full cycle.
Lovely, yeah.
Okay, now this term I've never heard before, so I'm very interested about. Void of course moon.
Right, okay. So the void of course moon, actually there are various meanings in astrology, but the one that I use and that I use in the card as well, it's a tiny little bit difficult to explain if you don't know astrology, but in a nutshell, it's about the fact that as the moon moves around the chart, it makes connections to the other planets. So you might get moon trine Venus or moon square Pluto or moon conjunct Mars. So in each sign. Now, after the moon makes its last major connection to one of the planets before changing signs, it's said to be void of course.
Ooh. Okay.
And it's not doing anything. It's doing nothing until it changes signs. So yeah, so the void of course moon, it's something that's used a lot in what's called horary astrology, which is an ancient form of astrological divination. And basically whatever happens at the time of the void of course moon is said to bear no fruit. So I remember once, for example, having broken up with a boyfriend, talking about that a lot at the moment, breaking up with people, because there's so many breakups going on with the eclipses we've just had. But anyway, he finally came back to me sort of with his tail between his legs a few weeks later, and I noticed that the moon was void of course, and I knew it wouldn't go anywhere, and it didn't.
Okay. So how do we notice, how do we know when the void of course moon is on?
Well, you need to know a bit of astrology, I'm afraid.
Okay, in order to do need to do some reading about it. Okay, let's move on into my two favorite moons that I want to talk about. Let's start with the supermoon. Okay,
so now supermoons actually happen every single year, and they're to do with the distance of the moon to the earth, because the moon doesn't go in an exact circle around the earth. It goes, you know, it's all very astronomical rather than astrological. But the supermoon has become very well known on Facebook as if it's this rare thing, but actually they happen a couple of times a year, every single year. And they're just basically because at some point the moon is closer, and at some point the moon is further away. And the supermoon is when it's closer, and it can look
looks bigger on the sky.
14% bigger, I think it is. Okay. So, you know, I think symbolically, because the distance of the moon will affect us to an extent because of the lunar powers. I think that I made that card sort of a warning of, you know, look, things are getting very intense emotionally.
Okay, so how's that related to the full moon eclipse though? Because they're both like intense moons.
Yes, well, sometimes you'll have the lunar eclipse will be a supermoon as well. I think this year or last year we had the supermoon, blood moon, lunar eclipse, something else. You know, you get these big intense ones, and everyone.
Okay, goddess. Okay, perfect. And then finally, the blue moon.
Okay, so again, the blue moon has lots of different meanings. You know, in America, they had one meaning. In England, they had another meaning. But essentially, a blue moon, the one I like to use is there's usually a certain amount of new moons and full moons in each season. And if you get an extra full moon in a season, then it's a blue moon. But it only ever happens very rarely, so it's called a blue moon. It's not actually blue. But there's also, if you get two full moons in the same sign in 1 month, which can happen. But I mean, you know, there's not really any astrological implications in that. It's just kind of a coincidence on the man-made calendar. But the card itself, what I made it is, you know, this is a rare thing.
Yes, because it says believe in the impossible, because it comes rarely, which is why we use the
Exactly.
phrase once in a blue moon, right?
Exactly, exactly. It was very funny the other day. My cousin,
Yeah.
who in Malta, who doesn't believe, hi Mark, if you watch this, doesn't
Yeah.
really believe in astrology or moonology,
Yeah.
or intuition or anything like that. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer, and very, you know, rational.
Yeah.
And he was shuffling my cards, and he was like, yeah, and he saw that card. He went, yeah, right. Believe in the impossible. And then, and I was like, yeah, Mark, believe in the impossible. And we were talking about something he's trying to do in his life at the moment, a creative project.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, well, I'll ask about the cards. So we shuffled them and chose one. And he said, you know, what's going to happen with my creative project? Pulled it, and he got believe in the impossible.
Oh wow! So yeah, so he's converging, right, to
Had a
moonology.
little, well, had a little affirmation. I
A
don't know how
little
much
bit.
he lived.
Wow. I love hearing like stories like that where people who don't believe, just something
Yeah.
happens and then there's a little glimpse of hope over there.
Exactly.
Okay, so my next question, I have two more questions for you. So everybody watching,
Okay.
let us know your questions. There are a few comments saying beautiful artwork. They're enjoying the artwork and the deck. And just let me remind everybody, the deck comes out September 25th. Is that right? And we can pre-order it from amazon.co.uk or amazon.com or Australia, wherever you are in the world, or you can get it from Hay House.
Yes.
As well as the Moonology Diary 2019, which is out already, and Astrology Made Easy, which is coming out, I think, on the same day.
It's all around
September.
the same time.
It's all around the same time in September. Okay. My
Launch
next
mode.
question, Yasmin, is can people who are not into astrology or don't know much about astrology yet still use the deck, and what can they use it for?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, you literally don't need to know anything about astrology. All you need to do is have the cards, have the intention to ask a question that you're going to get a proper answer to, ask it, and it's the same as any other deck of oracle cards. You don't need to know anything about astrology, but you might learn something. Watch out.
You just need to use your intuition in order to get information from the messages, from the artwork, from the symbolism in the cards.
Yes. But you literally, it's like I've got my famous Doreen Virtue Ascended Masters cards here, which I still love. And, you know, you don't need to know anything about Ascended Masters per se to understand the decks. It's the same thing.
Exactly. Now, what about people who know a lot about astrology, or like astrologers themselves? How can they use the deck in a more advanced way to give astrology readings, for example, or to read the chart? Can they use the deck in combination with reading the chart?
I mean, you definitely could use it in combination with a chart reading. I think the thing that would happen if you're a proper, you know, experienced astrologer and you're using these cards, what will actually happen is that you will actually be able to add your own layer of meaning. So I've given all the kind of the most top of mind sort of obvious things. But if you're an astrologer and you're reading someone's chart and you can see what's going on in their chart, and then you're doing the cards, you'll be able to go the extra mile in the interpretations.
Okay, so an extra layer into the chart reading, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and my final question has to do with that article we co-wrote in a way on your website, which was all about, because every time there's a full moon, you hear it on Facebook and Instagram, everybody's talking about this every full moon, everything's gonna go wrong, and just people freak out about it. And because, I mean, let's be honest, the energy of the full moon is quite intense, and I feel it as well. I just get more agitated and I feel more overwhelmed. So many emotions are coming up. And I've been thinking about ways to overcome the negative effects that the full moon seems to bring up for many people. And what I wrote in that article was moon bathing from the beginning of the moon cycle all the way through to the end of the cycle with the full moon, just like 10 minutes of moon bathing every single day, just so we can get that amount of moonlight progressively, gradually, so that we don't get overwhelmed on the full moon. Yeah. What are some of your tools and your ways of dealing with all the overwhelm that comes up with the full moon?
So George, the first thing I'd say is the full moon is not negative in itself.
Mm-hmm.
What it is that, and this is part of my sort of life purpose, I think,
Yes.
is to sort of, you know, we are not as children taught how to deal with our emotions. You know, like we're taught to basically behave, stand up, sit down, do your homework, do what your mum and dad says, and, you know, fit in. And there's not really room for lots and lots of emotions. And the reason why people might associate the full moon with negativity is because it is when all the emotions come up. And that can feel like a bad thing, but it's not, because actually, you know, as you know, we have to release all our, you know, stuff. And so, yeah, so think of it like that. Yeah, now I can't remember what the rest of your question was.
No, it's like you've answered it. It's all about working with the moon to really process our emotions. It really asks us to turn our attention inwards rather than trying to suppress our emotions, like society is telling us to do. It's all about, no, don't cry, no, don't do this, don't do that. Well, how about, well, cry? So moon,
and I do love your idea of, you know, moon bathing on a regular basis. And it doesn't even have to be every night, because not everybody's going to manage to get out for 31 days in a row. But but you know, even if you get out on a regular basis, and as George says, you know, rather than getting overwhelmed just at the full moon, you'll actually be more attuned to the moon. That's a beautiful idea, and I actually do that.
Just process it progressively.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That was my last question. Thank you so much for guiding us through the Moonology Oracle deck. I loved it. I've been using it for about 2 months now. I got an early copy, which I loved. So I got to give myself a reading every single day and just just follow the guidance from the moon. Everybody watching live or the replay, you can pre-order the deck on Amazon, Moonology Oracle Cards, as well as the Moonology book and the Moonology diary, and you can get your whole Moonology set.
And if you're in Australia, because I'll share this video if I can, you can get it from booktopia.com.au.
Exactly.
In Australia, we don't have Amazon.
Yes, it's Booktopia. Perfect. Thanks for mentioning that. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Have a wonderful rest of your holiday in Malta, and then
Thank you,
Paris.
George. I miss you.
I miss you as well. Next time I come to London, I'll make it a point to have a chat over coffee and chat about stuff. Yes.
Yeah. Come for dinner.
Thank you so much. I will for sure.
Okay.
Thank you everybody for watching live. Bye bye.
Lots of love.